My name's Carolyn McCarthy. I'm a Lowell native, born and raised in the Lower Highlands, and I am a choreographer, a dance educator, and a dancer. I also do a little bit of work in systems thinking, applying it to facilitating community dialogue and some curriculum building. I began dancing when I was about 3 years old, and I stuck with it, forever. And I was classically trained, and then I became a competitive dancer for a few years. Moving into high school, I studied dance in college and did some professional work after that before moving to Norway and getting a degree in a field called system dynamics. Alongside all of this dancing, it was also dance teaching. So I started teaching dance when I was about 10 years old as a volunteer at an after-school program. At my mother's school, she was teaching a program, and so I brought a group of 7th graders into a classroom. We emptied out all of the desks and chairs. We had a boom box and some CDs, and I just started teaching and choreographing then. And in that after-school program, that volunteerism really started to grow into becoming an assistant and teaching formal dance classes in private studios, and then even today I'm teaching in the Lowell public school system contemporary dance and also a little bit of jazz dance. I was always very eager and always very engaged and enthusiastic around teaching because I just loved doing it so much. I always wanted to round up, girls who were friends or just anybody who would make up cool dances to songs that I was interested on in the radio or whatever was playing. So it really, dance and teaching dance has never been anything I've really thought about too much. It just has always come and has stuck for a long time. I came across this CD that just said Carolyn's Dance, and I put it in, and it was a picture of this 10-year-old girl, it was me, on a stage full of maybe 14 to 20 dancers, and I was just so young, and it was just so cool to look back and think about how from such an early age that was something I was so excited about and came so naturally to me. I didn't mind being, younger than everyone that I was teaching and, holding space for all of these dancers. And it just reinforces that that's something I just love and feel like I was made to do. So I've taught students who were from, low-income communities who've had zero dance experience, so middle school students. I've taught dance to people with Parkinson's disease who, are in, the 60s, 70s. I've taught advanced trained dancers who have been doing it their entire life. So there's been along, my dance career, a variety of people who have been able to teach. And then just recently teaching beginner heels classes in Lowell to adults and again, people of all different movement backgrounds and abilities. I find with working with younger people, you have to use a hook different. There's a way that you hook them in, and especially with youth, to make sure that the motivation is present. So beyond even teaching them certain ballet techniques or jazz techniques, are they having fun? Do they want to be there? And how can you create an environment that gets them excited and motivated to do difficult things, to be able to stick through a process of learning a new movement that's foreign to their body, but understanding I'm going to continue to do this over and over again, and eventually this is going to come to me with ease, and I'll be able to do this beautiful thing that I see the older girls doing, and they're so cool and we love them. So for younger dancers, it's definitely speaking to getting them excited, making sure that they're having a really great time in the studio, and then using that as a way to fuel their kind of grit as they go about the process. Lots of positive reinforcement with younger people. With older dancers, depending on the age, if I'm looking at speaking to millennials, for example, I find that there can sometimes be a lot of self-critique as I'm teaching dance in the classroom. We're in rooms surrounded by mirrors. And so that's a whole other issue that comes with, particular age groups and generations where we have to remind ourselves to be saying positive things to ourselves in the mirror and be grateful for all of the things that our bodies do for us. And I find with working with aging populations, they're ready to move. They've been in their bodies for such a long time. They are just grateful for the opportunity, like for the classes that I've done with Donna Maselli through the People with Parkinson's dance programs. They're just so grateful to be able to move their bodies and then to notice how that form of exercise through dance versus lifting weights or boxing or things like that have allowed them to exist in the world outside of the classroom in a different way. So lots of different focuses for lots of different age groups, and it's understanding why they're in the classroom and what they really need to persist through classes that can sometimes be difficult. I run into students having trouble getting out of their heads in two different contexts. So there's when I ask students to improvise, I find that I'll give a task, okay, this is what you're going to do, and go to the first thing that comes to your head. And I can notice that they get into their heads when they start looking around and there's a pause. And so when I experience that in guiding improvisation, I say, first thing that your gut tells you, don't think about it. Whatever your reaction is, go for that. And I found that works. Just allowing them to trust whatever comes as an impulse to them and saying that that's right, whatever it is. There's no wrong or right way to go about it, just follow it. The other way in which I see students getting really stuck in their heads is when they're performing choreography. So when they're rehearsing for getting in front of a group of people, there can be a lot of stress. And two things that I do is to remind them of what's the emotion behind the piece that they're doing, to really locate that inside them and allow that to come out, versus counting in your head and thinking about doing all of the technique perfectly and demonstrating everything in that way. Recently, I found a student who's a beautiful dancer. She's technically trained, and she was just so rigid when she was performing in the studio. And she said she was afraid, and I asked her, why? What are you afraid of? What is it that you're feeling? And she was saying that she felt like she needed to prove something on that stage for a competition. And so in that case, I replied to her saying, you already are all of the things. You have beautiful technique, you're a lovely dancer, you're a lovely human. You are those things. You have nothing to prove when you get on that stage. You just simply need to walk out and be that. Demonstrate that you are that for them, because they haven't met you yet. And so I found that that's one of the ways that helps students, instead of thinking of that getting in their heads and what's going to be perceived, always bringing it back and locating it centrally to help them cut through all of those intrusive thoughts that might be coming. I think there are a lot of ways in which movement and dance are different from other art forms. So there's the experience of it for the dancer themselves, that it's located within the body, the art that you're doing, you're moving, and the body houses, the body is a vessel for memories, for all of your lived experiences, for your emotions, for your current stimulus and what's going on around you. So in terms of partaking in the form of dance, art in the form of dance, there's a lot that comes from just really being human. And it's not an abstraction. It's not something that you paint and you can stick on a wall to view for later. The art is your body. The art is yourself. And so that, I think, is different from the experience of the artist who's on stage, the mover, the dancer. I also think dance is different from other art forms in that when you're able to see someone on stage performing, there is a certain immediacy to the impact that movement can have on your body. It's not something that you have to look at and ponder and go through an intellectual exercise in order to get what's going on. When you see someone moving in a way, whether it's in a contortion that's conveying some type of pain or some type of joy, it's immediate and it doesn't go through the head, it goes right to the gut. And I think that's so powerful about dance, that we can use that movement to tell stories and be able to get people to feel differently about topics instead of going through intellectual exercises, which may not be as effective to moving people towards change or coming together around a certain idea. A lot of dancers in the United States come up through classical training, which consists of ballet as the foundation for these other genres, including jazz dance and lyrical, contemporary, etc. And for ballet, it's very much so about the way that you look and how you're being perceived by the audience in that one sphere. And so there is a right way to do ballet and there's a wrong way to do it. And so for so long in my own training, and even when I'm teaching ballet to my students, there's such an emphasis, on how this movement looks versus how your body is naturally structured and how you can notice the sensations that are coming internally as you move. And so as I'm getting a little bit older and becoming less concerned about ballet technique, I've found it really enjoyable to look at the body as an instrument and therefore understand my skeleton, understand my muscular structure, so that when I'm moving, I can bring in different movement qualities versus everything having a lovely control and presentation because it looks nice. What more emotions could you be expressing, or just could it feel differently to the dancer if instead you're focusing on the weight of your head and how gravity is pulling on your body, or how the spine is structured to move in all of these interesting ways that a lot of other animals in the animal kingdom can't do. And so while ballet is still very important and foundational to a lot of technique that we find in the studio, I love forms like contemporary dance that allow you to explore different dynamics based on sensations of gravity pulling against the body. Dance is also a beautiful metaphor for life because of its transient nature. It's something that's happening now, which for a while was a big issue because we weren't able to record dance for hundreds of years, and therefore we don't know how certain genres developed. And then then we started to notate, and everybody had a different notation method. But the fact that it's occurring in the body, it's happening over a period of time, you're in the space around you, you're using your energy. It's just a beautiful way to think about how we move on stage or in dances can be compared to how we move throughout life. I would suggest if a person is interested in any form of dance, go for it. If that's what you're excited about, if it's Bollywood, if it's hip hop, if it's ballet, go for it. Because if you're excited about doing it, that's going to help you stick with it. I love to teach when I'm working with whether there's younger students or older students who have no formal dance background. I love working with contemporary and also with jazz, because contemporary, the way that I teach it, again, it's very focused on just understanding the body, and so it's kind of a form of education in that way too, where we're learning about how our body can move. And jazz I like to also use for beginners because it's an easy entrance into pop music that we're listening to currently, and very simple and fun dance moves. Perhaps more important than the genre of dance that I recommend for a beginner, it's so important to find a teacher who is willing to guide you through that process and who can see that you might need something broken down in another way and is willing to take that time to translate the movement for the beginner. Good teachers for beginners are really important so that they don't feel like they're left behind. If a student is placed in that class because their parent has always wanted to do ballet, or there are external reasons for them doing it, or maybe they enjoy class because they get a lollipop at the end, it only works for so long. It's really, in the end, the reason why we dance is not because we're trying to have a certain type of workout or an exercise. It's because there's something that's driving us to move and to express something and to share that in a space with others. And so for me, that's always where it comes from, that allows you to stick with it and enjoy it.